FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz, and hey, with us is Danielle Park. We're going to be talking about something that is taking place right now that I'm almost certain you're not aware of, that has the potential to dramatically change your life, the lives of everyone around you, and the world as you know it. Hey, first, why don't you send us an email? kl@kerrylutz.com is the email address, and let us know what you think is happening. So what I'm talking about is The Boring Company. That's BORING company. It's an Elon Musk company. No, it's not about putting you to sleep. It's about digging tunnels. We got Danielle Park on with us now. And don't forget, our website is jugglingdynamite.com. So Danielle, we both kind of been following this thing independently. And there's if you're not familiar with what it is, basically through a new technology, these machines that would dig tunnels like under New York, they would cost $1 billion a mile. Even in the cheapest places, a couple hundred, 200, $300 million a mile. With the Boring Company using adapted technology from the Tesla propulsion system, they're able to bring that cost down to 10 to 20 million, plus the cost of the stations. And it's a whole new world. You will have electric vehicles in it. You won't need ventilating towers like they have in today's tunnels. And these cars are going to be able to buzz about at over 100 miles an hour. Danielle, you've been following this. What's your take on it?
Yeah, well, it isn't that, the basic premise of burrowing a hole underneath cities and having train-like vehicles, joined together as cars in a sequence, being propelled through them is just a basic subway system idea that we've had for more than 100 years, of course. So there's no, as you say, it's not the idea of making a tunnel under a city and putting people through it that's new. It's the technology advancement that's come through the Tesla company that has allowed them to make this so much more cost effectively. And of course, he's also tying in some of his, battery technology, renewable energy to help drive it. That also brings down the cost. So it's just become it's leaps and bounds ahead of where the sort of break-even points were on such a project in the last number of years. And so this is really becoming a viable thing. And I think this is the trend, Kerry, as I've been certainly speaking and writing about this for a long time now, but it's this accelerating pace of change that is enabled by technology now. And people, I think, are missing a lot of the ability that comes from that. They sort of think of things in a linear way. They don't think of things in an S-curve style, which is typically what happens in these really new accelerations. And so, yes, there's a lot of parts to this. First of all, you need the electric vehicles to be available and, cost effective so that the population can acquire them. Because as you put the vehicle through the tunnel into the ground, it can't be emitting fumes, obviously, or emissions of like a standard car, because then you've got the entirely new or, big problem of emissions and how to filter out the air and all that. In this system, it's just almost like it's very modernistic, isn't it? It's the video that you sent me a video and I put it on the blog, actually, that just shows the technology really well. It's essentially, electric car drives onto a platform, drops down into a series of pods almost, and those pods are kept at a certain distance. The driver does nothing, and that's why they can go at 120 miles an hour underground, because there's no room for driver error whatsoever. There's no emissions. It's literally you sit back and relax, and you go from A to B in very rapid time, and it's genius. And it's always been a fantasy, let's say. I mean, we can think of lots of sci-fi movies where we've had this type of thing in the film or the imagination of the creator, but the technology wasn't there. And now it is, or it's certainly, now they've not only have they done a test hole, but they're now starting the first legs of this thing. And it really transforms transportation, which is a theme. It's part of the transformation of transportation that I've been talking and writing about for some time.
Absolutely. And, it was interesting the way this whole thing was conceived. Elon Musk, pulls out of his mansion, wherever it is in LA, and he's stuck in heavy traffic. It's just not moving. And it occurs to him that, this is stupid. Buildings, he said, are in 3D. Our road grid system is in 2 dimensions. And the only way we would have to build elevated highways or elevated train systems, which are prohibitively expensive, especially in urban areas. But if you dig down 40 feet, which in most cases, perhaps not in New York City, is enough to go down underneath all the infrastructure, you won't have any problems with subsidence of soil and that type of thing. And then these moles, as they were called, I don't know what he's calling them now, but when they have this thing called a muck line, so as they dig out the dirt goes on a conveyor belt and it has to be done away with. Well, he's figured out how to turn this stuff into bricks and line the new tunnel with these bricks and sell them for 12 cents a piece. Which is dirt cheap, no pun intended.
Literally, yeah.
Because a nice brick from Brickwork could cost you $1 a pop, easy. And you buy those antique brick and they cost a fortune. So nothing is going to waste here. But the next one that is proposed, right now they're building one in Las Vegas to service the expanded Las Vegas Convention Center, and it's going to take like 6,000 people an hour on these. They're going to have these little trams that are based on the Model Y, the Model X Tesla, which has already been approved by the National Highway Traffic, whoever approves vehicles. So you don't have to go through a whole certification process. It'll be modified. Maybe it'll hold 8 or 10 people. And these things will zip you like 1.5 miles across the convention center in a matter of seconds. And, this is just a prototype. This isn't the end goal, but you got to do it someplace. He's already got one tunnel that goes 1.5 miles, a mile and a half, right from Hawthorne, California to a vacant lot. And the reporter, it's on YouTube, went for a ride with him, and he got it up to 100 miles an hour, and she was just scared to death. But honestly, once you go on something, like I was up on a SUV on an 8,500 foot mountainside overlooking a valley in Nevada, and I wasn't like particularly scared of dying. So it's really it could be the ultimate disruptive technology, Danielle.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Today's show is brought to you by U.S. Gold Corp. U.S. Gold Corp is a U.S.-focused gold exploration and development company advancing high-potential projects in Wyoming and Nevada. U.S. Gold Corp has consolidated a district on Nevada's productive Cortex trend and is advancing the Copper King project towards production in Wyoming, led by a team of prolific company builders and renowned explorers, including Dave Mathewson, who is directly responsible for several major Nevada gold discoveries. U.S. Gold Corp is well-capitalized and has an extremely tight share structure with less than 20 million shares outstanding and trades on the NASDAQ, a major exchange, under the ticker symbol USAU. To learn more, go to usgoldcorp.gold. That's usgoldcorp.gold.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Well, it's because it's an urgent need, right? We have, going on 8 billion people in the world. We have a lot of congestion in big cities. We have tons of air pollution. We have so much lost productivity. Yeah. People just sitting around. It's soul destroying. I know anyone, Musk has 5 kids and he has to make that commute from his home in Bel Air to his factory every day, and so it's not surprising that someone like him.
I really feel for him.
And he's trying to be so productive. He's got so many irons in the fire, and he's sitting there thinking, "God, I've built this great electric car that doesn't emit pollution as we drive, and it's dirt cheap to run, like pennies on the mile to run. But the problem is that I can't get there any faster because I'm in this gridlock of all these other vehicles." Mm-hmm. And especially around LA, as you know, it's horrendous. So again, this is these ideas of wasting less and saving more, of recycling, the recycling of the dirt into the bricks on site. This is 3D printing. This is on site instead of, shipping from far away. This is a huge tipping point in the way that we think about how to meet the world's needs for transportation and energy, and how we use time efficiently now that we have that capability. It used to be that we didn't have any option. We had to waste a lot of our time with menial tasks and going to and fro and all that sort of thing. But think about, the revolution of the computer and email and all these things that have allowed us to be much more efficient. Well, this is just the next natural iteration of that. Makes perfect sense.
And it's got another benefit that is amazing that people aren't thinking about. I was just last week at the airport, and I leave from Fort Lauderdale because I'm going to Nevada, and the airport is packed. I mean, it's getting to the point where it's going to shut down. There's just too big a demand, too big a need. And I get to Salt Lake City, where it's changing to go to Reno. I go to the Delta Lounge there. It's packed. You can't move. And in Salt Lake, which has never been a really efficient airport ever, it's packed there too. The Boring Company is the solution to that as well, because any trip for like a few hundred miles, 200 to 500 miles, makes more sense to go through a tunnel than it does to go check in at the airport and go through that trauma. So it will also effectively prolong the life of these airports and reduce crowding there as well. I mean, they're even talking about you'll hop in a tunnel coast to coast and you'll wake up in the morning and you'll be, you'll be in LA when you started out in New York. I don't know how practical that is and how quickly that's going to come about. One of the greatest things about the Boring machine, Danielle, is that he's saying it's 500% to 1,000% faster than the traditional moles that they use to build these tunnels, which basically pull out, a couple of feet a day. You can't even see them move. If it wasn't for the lasers and the markings, you wouldn't even know that they were moving because they go so slowly and they go 24/7, these machines. His is going to be fully autonomous, probably have a couple of people overseeing it to make sure the conveyors don't get blocked up and stuff, but totally autonomous vehicles.
The other thing, Carrie, of course, is this marries perfectly with this influx of transportation as a service and shared rides. Shared rides. So it's not necessary that every person who uses this tunnel has their own individual electric car. I can think that it's going to be very common for either to have multiple, vehicle pads that move maybe on the scale of a bus or something, and then also, like Uber style. Won't be called a Uber probably, but they may have electric cars that use this as well. But basically, that kind of thing where the overall effect is that you're going to have a lot less vehicles on the road in this type of technology. You're going to have a lot less need for vehicles on the road. And it's going to clean up the streets. It's going to free up parking lots for, reclamation back to green space or vertical farming, or who knows what we're going to do. But there's a lot of space that is going to be repurposed as this transition takes forward. So it's really amazing to think of the possibilities as well, and the savings that can come from that. And if you look at the trends, I was writing, we've kind of got this perfect tipping point between the ability of technology and the imagination of leaders like Musk and others who have really been, focused on making breakthroughs in this space. And then you've got at the same time the tipping point in the old methodology, which was everyone buying a rapidly depleting asset known as a internal combustion engine, which, for many decades has been built on the premise of almost planned obsolescence, like needing a lot of service and parts, not lasting that long. This has been the service model. We've discussed this before. The North American automakers have really the manufacturing service and finance has been the main profit drivers in that model for a long time. So, you look at the population has the debt to reflect that, not just in mortgages, but in the cost of buying, the average price of a vehicle, I think, has been $35,000. It's increased in the last 10 years, even as wages have flatlined, because it's a financed product, of course. And as interest rates came down after the Great Recession, There was all these incentives and cash for clunkers and everything to get people into new cars. Well, of course, it went from the sublime to the ridiculous because, whenever any repairs would come up, people still didn't have any cash left over to make them. And so they would borrow more, and then they started rolling the old loan into the new loan. And now you've got a third of Americans, and frankly, Canadians are in the same kind of boat, who are now trading in cars with still debts they owed on the old car and adding that to the new. This is the opposite of a down payment, Carrie. This is coming in with negative equity. And what it really means is it's made it impossible for people to update their vehicles or take on more debt. So it's really, especially now, you're seeing a rise in defaults. The ratio of defaults in the second quarter was similar to what we saw coming out of the Great Recession. So there's a lot of the consumer solvency filings in Canada, for example, just on the same line, and a lot of that is auto debt as well as student debt and housing debt, but they're leaping like 20% year over year right now. So it's this delinquency, like exhausted consumer, these cars that were bought on impossibly long term, 7 years, that are wearing out before they're repaid. All that is the old model, right? And then you look at, okay, what can we do to stop escalating cost and the need to add more debt and get much more efficient in moving people from A to B, so they don't have to become debt slaves to do it and all that. And that's where all these new ideas really make a lot of sense.
I couldn't agree with you more. The debt slavery is out of hand. Effectively, when you take a car that's upside down and you roll the balance into the new loan, you are effectively paying interest on interest. And that does not work for the long term. My grandfather taught me that, and he had an 8th grade education. I think they taught a lot more back then in 8th grade than they do now. And he learned it by the seat of his pants as well. And never a borrower or a lender be. Well, borrower part, yeah. Lender, hey, if you're the right lender, you've been robbing the world for decades now, but that's definitely coming to an end. And the technology behind the Tesla, it's got its limitations, but the software and the programming has so brilliantly acted in tandem to really almost negate its range boundness. I mean, the range isn't that bad, but the charging, all these things, telling you where to, you program in your route and it'll say you're going to have to stop to get a charge here. And you'll be there for 20 minutes. And, there's 8 people at the station now. And all of these things, the technology without the technology, the Tesla could not exist. It's clear. Without the technology.
It's exactly like all these other businesses that we're looking at. Without the app, Uber couldn't exist.
Oh, yeah.
Without the app, Skip the Dishes couldn't exist. All these things that people are coming to take for granted. And it has to do with this marriage of need, efficiency, and technology availability all at the same time. And what I've been driving a Tesla now since the spring, and what I find the most interesting, or I guess heartwarming about it, honestly, is that everywhere I go, I'll be sitting somewhere, and a person will come up to me and say, "Hey, can I ask you a question?" And it's just because they happen to see you drive in the car, or it's in the driveway or whatever. And everybody wants to know, and especially young people are very excited about the prospects of this technology. And I love it because I get a chance to explain it to them, show it to them, and to encourage them that, it starts out being, as all these technologies do, a very expensive, bit of goods, but ultimately it's coming for the masses as the price comes down. And also, as I've already explained, the cost of running it is already extremely cheaper, like 75% cheaper than trying to run an ICE car. How much does it cost me to recharge in my garage? About $1.50. And then I get about 470 kilometers out of that. And the new range batteries, the 100Ds, have a 600 kilometer range. I know you have to translate that into miles, but anyway.
600, that's 360 miles. It's 0.6 kilometers, 0.6 miles to a kilometer. So.
Yeah, but I think the other thing that which was alluded to in the original clip that we started talking about, and it's also in the charging stations. Really, what Tesla's built is a utility company. So the the cars themselves have this whole infrastructure build out, which is part of why it's been so expensive for them to do this, is to build these charging stations all across North America. And as the other car makers now come to market with their various models, they're way behind on the eight ball on the recharging function, right? They have to now either build out their own chargers or find a way to, consolidate. It makes sense to me that we should really have a consolidated system where, whatever type of car you have, you can charge off a utility system. Like maybe Tesla's at the head of that. Maybe he sells it to someone else. Maybe some other company merges and runs it, something. But again, efficiencies of scale would say we should have, as we pull into gas stations now and can fill anyone's car, we should be able to pull into a charging station and charge anyone's car. But also in the boring thing, the payback is so quick because the cost of making the tunnels and setting it up is so relatively low compared with other old tech versions of that. The return on capital, investment capital comes back within 3 years in many of the busy loops. They can do the math, on how many people are on the road, how many people would use such a thing, how they would price it effectively so that it would be cheaper for the customer than the current tolls and gas they're using to get from A to B. And when they do that, they can see that not only is the investment paid back so quickly to Tesla or the boring company, whoever's putting these tunnels in, but it becomes like a massive utility that throws off income.
Like toll roads or bridges.
Like toll roads, exactly. So, except with not the wear and tear, the friction, the pollution, the oil spills, all the stuff that goes with the current highway system. So, and then the other little thing I just want to mention about the electric car thing, which many people are missing, is that when you get these connected electric cars, they too form part of the utility infrastructure because they will be able to act as batteries to back up storage when needed on the whole grid. And that's part of the vision as well.
Yeah, well, the idea of using a car battery with the hybrids, like with a Prius or with the Chevy Volt, they had tremendous batteries compared to what's available now. With an inverter, you could run stuff in your house for a couple of days. That's all they did was the Tesla, what do they call them? Power bricks.
Power walls.
Power walls. They're just batteries that they take in, same batteries going into the car. Hey, we're not even talking about the improvements in battery technology that are coming very, very quickly. The guy who invented the lithium-ion battery, I believe he was a professor at the University of Texas in Austin, where my son Brandon graduated from. And he's
John Goodenough. John Goodenough, right? That's the guy that they just gave
that's the guy.
Yeah.
Oh, he did get it? He got it?
Oh, I didn't see it. John Goodenough, Stanley Whittingham, and Akira Yoshino, they've all been working on the lithium-ion battery since the 70s. And they all got the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for 2019 in October.
Yeah. Okay. So he came up with a successor battery in 2016 to the lithium ion, which uses sodium instead of lithium, safer, more stable, all these things.
Solid state.
Yeah. Solid state battery with no wet process used to make it, much cheaper, much more efficient, faster charging. But all of this stuff is going to be worked out in the not too distant future. I was thinking, when you were talking about the charging stations, like, we have a Shell, we have Exxon, we have Chevron, and then electric is truly homogeneous. You don't care who the electric comes from, where it comes from. It's the same electricity as long as it's a certain number of amps and a certain number of volts. It's identical, and there's dirty and there's clean, but not to muddy the waters here, because electricity is electricity. So what would be the justification for having all these different charging stations available to you? You really only need one. It doesn't matter. So then the public utility model really works. And who's going to own the public utility but Tesla? They own it because they've got 14,000 units and counting. And the new tax law has made it very cost effective and tax beneficial to put all of the money into these charging stations, because you just get to write it off your taxes. You get 100% bonus depreciation, just as an aside. So that's helped speed the thing up. Well, you know what's amazing, Danielle, is in spite of all of the entrenched interests who have been against Tesla from day one. I'm talking about the car companies, I'm talking about the oil companies, and everybody connected with it, because they're huge industries that go with it. The tide has turned. The future is electric. Nothing is going to change that now. And to me, what proved it was the Tesla Model 3, because until that point, Tesla was a high-end niche vehicle, which is fine, and you can make a lot of money doing that, but that's not so revolutionary. When you bring it to Joe Sixpack and he can, get the benefits of an electric vehicle, everything's different. Well, anyway.
Also, the Y is coming out next summer, and that's the Model 3 with a hatchback.
Correct.
And their projections on that are that will sell more than all the other models they've built to date.
Yeah, and the
everyone wants a hatchback.
And the Gigafactory in China is the most popular. You know what's amazing about the car, Danielle? The Model S is outselling ultra luxury cars, the Mercedes, BMW, and Audi high-end, the S-Class Mercedes, the A8 Audi, and the 7 Series BMW. It's outselling all of those cars between that and the X.
The Germans are quite worried because they're
reason.
behind. They're behind, and they've got to catch up now.
Yeah, and there is no catching up. I believe that Tesla is in the position that I don't see where anybody can catch up with them. There will be other companies, all right? There will be companies manufacturing these, but I don't see that anybody really is in a position to surpass Tesla because they're already 5 steps ahead, Danielle. This is their 3rd, 4th generation EV. The other ones are starting on their 1st and 2nd. The Porsche, yeah, beautiful car that goes 200 miles an hour, but, it's $180,000. It's really not in the mainstream of EVs. Anyway, we got to go, but make sure you take a look at Danielle's website, which is jugglingdynamite.com. Take a look at ours, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. We will catch you in a couple of weeks, Danielle. Thanks.
Thank you, Carrie.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.